Is the audio working already?
Let me test.
Testing now. Testing now. Hello, hello,
Wait. Say something.
hello, hello.
Yeah, we're good.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to this very exciting evening event. In front of me right here, we have three very cool people. They'll introduce themselves in a minute, but to give a quick spiel, this is the Cyber Alumni panel. So these are three amazing people who are alumni from our great club, who are doing really cool stuff right now. So I'll pass the mic around to them so they can introduce themselves, a second mic. So you guys yourself who you are, maybe when you graduated, and what's something cool you're doing right now, and maybe a fun fact. So take it away.
Hello. Hi everyone, my name is Aaron and I graduated in 2020. Yeah, I was a cyber alumni. I am currently working at Apple in the Bay Area. And one fun fact about myself, I came in on Thursday, and so on Friday I was walking on campus, and then I never seen the Coco Starship little things, and I was like, "What is that?" And my brother is like telling me, "Oh yeah, it's like loose food and stuff like that." And if you pick it up and set it like if it's on its side and you set it up, it'll be like, "Oh, thank you for helping me." Yeah, it's made me feel old. My fun fact.
Hi, I'm Sanjana. I also am a second. Surprising. Currently, I'm a Stanford grad student. Graduating this quarter. Super excited to be done with school forever. Really. I'm planning on. So I'm going to join Anduril. It's a defense tech startup in Costa Mesa. So I'm joining them in April as their first offensive security engineer. And so I'm interested in AI privacy and security for like systems, and also just using machine learning to create attacks. And one fun fact about me is also I've never seen a star. I feel I'm trying to measure how ancient.
Hello, guess what? I'm also a cyber alumni.
Whoa.
I was also Studio C Prez last year when I graduated. I currently work for Blizzard. I'm trying to stop hackers, my anti-cheat and stuff like that. And fun fact, well, I also part of a indie game studio. We founded a couple ACM Studio alumni called Sondering Studio. You can look it up. But yeah, we make like narrative-based games, so just got a quick plug for that. Fun fact is I'm gonna go deviate off the like aging or something. I graduated like last year, I'm not that old, right? Fun fact is I can do the splits. Wait, don't ask me.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. So the way this is going to work basically is pretty free-form chill. We're going to open it up generally to questions for you guys to ask. So if you guys have a question you want to ask, just please raise your hand and we'll say it to you. We have some people joining online as well, so if they have questions, Alec will be raising his hand and pointing to me, letting us know that we have a question in the chat. So feel free to share that. If anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand to start. If not, I'm going to start asking some questions myself. So I was wondering if you guys could tell us what was your favorite part about cyber?
I think my favorite part of cyber was at the time, I don't want to say back in my head, but at the time, I think cyber was a little bit smaller than it was now. It's grown a bit, and I think just the community and the people that like I got to be on board with, or interns, I think like hanging out with them and being able to like make those relationships. Yeah, I think that was the best part of cyber. Just the fact that we were all like learning and trying to do those things together. Yeah, I like that part. I think that's something that you don't really experience once you graduate college.
Yeah, I guess my thing is almost the same. So we used to call ourselves like the cyber cult. and we were cooler than every other ACM club, which is specifically hack. But yeah, no, I think I really love just like cyber's community and just how close we were. We bonded a lot. I think my only regret is that we were never able to actually get CTF IRL happen, but nice. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the advice or just the reflections that Aaron and Sasha shared pretty much go without saying, right? What relationships you make and the time you spend with each other, struggling on CS 111, 131, the same classes and the same grind. That's a very special time. That yeah, it's in the moment, maybe you don't exactly cherish it, but maybe hopefully after you get past it, you can look back on it fondly. But yeah, I mean, I guess some memories related to cyber would be like when we came up with the name Psi Beta Rho. Actually, we were like walking down Gailey, and we're like, like, well, like we call this like PVR cyber, like, so I think that's where the name came from. And other than that, like just random stuff like just getting boba, late night, or just going through all those interviews and reviewing those, taking like hours and bring over those. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, I look back on just the time spent pretty fondly.
One more thing. So I don't know if you guys remember, but we also rickrolled. In the study, I don't know if this is still a thing, but like the study has kiosks, and there's like a way to get out of the menu system. So there's like a cyber. It's like a social. So we basically made a social out of this, and we rickrolled like at least one or two of the kiosks. So that was also pretty fun.
That sounds awesome. I know the cyber frat still appreciates the name to this day. Yeah, jailbreaking the study, that sounds pretty fun. So I guess another question I ask is, what is something really cool that you're working on? Because you guys all work in security field, so I'm wondering if you guys can share something not too secret that you guys are working right now that you find really awesome.
I think anti-cheat for games is pretty cool. There's a lot of techniques that hackers will use to try to get control and like create things. So for example, like Overwatch 2, right, a first-person shooter, like common hacks for that would be like ESP hack, which is wall hacks, or like game bots. And so just finding ways to detect those behaviors where they're modifying, the game client, right, trying to execute code maliciously, or if they're using some sort of pixel bot, and just like various like methodologies. I'm being vague because I don't want to give too many of the secrets away, but yeah, that space is very interesting when you kind of get into it. And there's surprisingly a lot of money to be made from a cheat developer standpoint, which is such an error.
So currently this is more of like a last year project. But so something I was working on most of last year was bypassing face verification systems on dating apps. So I can go on a whole rabbit hole, which I'm not going to do right now. So if you want to, but essentially the idea is that it's possible to use machine learning techniques like generative adversarial networks to generate images that essentially have like similar enough facial features that it passes verification, but that qualitatively look absolutely different from you. So essentially it's just like a really cool way to make like catfish bots. Not that I'm saying you should, but you could.
Yeah, for me, I guess I didn't explain exactly what I was working in the intro. And so I work at Apple on like kernel security, basically, or OS security. So it's basically like CS 111, but I do it for my job. Yeah, and I like it. So I think one thing that's cool that I'm working on is just, let's see, what can I say? Well, I'll say one thing cool about it. I can't really say what I'm working on, but I think one thing cool about like working at Apple and like a company like that, that makes their own hardware is like how closely you can work with people from other teams. Like I'm in software technically, and just like working with people from hardware, working with people from other teams, and then also like the scale, the amount of devices that we make. I think it's like hard to imagine like how many people are affected if an issue affects like, 0.0001% of all people with an iPhone. So I think that's one cool aspect of it. And also like my day job has me using a lot of what I learned in school. Yeah, specifically like 111, but other classes as well. So I think that's pretty cool as well.
Awesome. Oh, we have a question from, well, let me walk over actually to you.
What do you think helped you learn the most during your time in ACM Cyber? Like, was it like activities or self-study or just talking with other people?
I think for me, it was a lot of like, I would say mostly like not really self-study, but like studying or learning about things with like other officers. Yeah, there's like a couple of people in cyber that I think were really like technically, I guess, like mentors for me. So I think that helped. I would say the workshop portion was more of like just something that I like to do, like pedagogical. I wouldn't really say it's, taught me a bunch. I think it taught me like softer skills, not really anything super technical. But I definitely learned a little bit during that, but I think for the most part, the bulk of it was just like having that community and learning with those other people, not necessarily like the workshop portion, although I did enjoy that for others.
For me, I guess it was like developing CTF challenges, where I would try to challenge myself. So I think when we were doing CCTF, I came up with like a BLE challenge and like a router hacking challenge. So it was just like pushing myself to do harder, like to come up with harder security problems and like just learn about them while you're developing.
For me, I would say it was the workshops. Specifically, like I guess one example was the game hacking workshop. I believe, yeah, that was something that we like started as an idea. It was like an interest I had and wanted to present, and so it was just doing a little bit of research on that. And I think, like Sandra mentioning, like creating challenges for that, where you're actually applying the knowledge that you kind of learn, and then by teaching others, you're in a way like consolidating information so that's digestible to yourself as well. And so I think that loop of just prepping for workshops, presenting them, gaining those soft skills of being able to like break down a concept, as well as like create a challenge, which is like practical application of that knowledge. I think that was what helped.
Awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, challenge writing definitely very hard, but very educational. I guess the next question I'd like to ask is bouncing off some of Aaron just mentioned with classes that were really helpful. What was your guys, both your favorite class here usually, and what class do you think was the most helpful for what you do now?
Okay, this is hard. This is a hard question. But for some reason, the first class that came to my mind was Scan 50. Okay, because it was like notoriously known for being really easy and very chill, and it was very chill. But the literature that we read was, I still remember it. We read like Knut Hamsun's Hunger and like Hans Christian Andersen, like, fairy tales and like those. I found that class actually like the material pretty interesting to read and digest. So that was just something that just popped into my head for some reason. But I think the most useful class for me, like CS33 and CS111.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Peter. I think CS33, CS111, I think was probably the class I liked the most, or I just like the concepts, and so that's why I do it as a job. But I think one class that I wish that I had more time to like digest was probably 131. I don't know how many of you have taken that with Edgar, but basically he has not read this entire textbook almost. Like he tells you, oh, only these chapters, but then if you add all the chapters up, it's like over like 3/4 of the book. So I don't know. I felt like that was kind of rushed, but I wish I could take it again.
Okay, so for background, unlike these guys here, I'm actually an electrical engineering major, so I don't really know about any of the CS classes here, but I think so. What's interesting, at least, okay, so EE is obviously better than CS. Hot take. So what's interesting, at least at UCLA, is that a lot of the machine learning concepts that I learned were through like the UC testing courses, and that's kind of why I'm in grad school right now. So it's like what, like 146, 143, 114, and I feel like none of these numbers well, that makes sense. People who aren't in the, but yeah. I think they're like pretty key to what I'm doing right now.
So, yeah, E classes I will say are pretty cool. I'm taking some right now, so. Oh, another.
How do you guys go about like looking for security related internships or experience?
That's a great question. I think for me, I have like sort of hot take on this topic, but for me, when I was in ACM Cyber, I always thought that I wanted to do something as like a security engineer, which if you like read the job description, it's more like hands-on dealing with security incidents, maybe doing security research, like something very, very focused on security, like where security is first and engineering is kind of second. And then around my like third year, I figured out that's actually not what I want to do. What I want to do is more like work, be a software engineer, but work on a security product, I guess. So for me, it was a little special because I didn't really do that much security specific stuff. I think it was, yeah, for me, it was more like be a software engineer, but I like really enjoy security and I want to do something like in that area. I think mainly for the reason that in a lot of like CTFs and stuff, it's all about like breaking things or, you know, like finding ways through things. It's kind of like a puzzle. But for me, I wanted more of the feeling of like gardening, where it's like you're kind of like tilling the soil, you know, you're I don't know, scooping the poop into putting the fertilizer in. And I think that like for me is like more fulfilling and fulfilling. Just building something that has a security focus, which I think is what I do. So yeah, for me, I don't think I did anything special. But when I did apply for jobs at Apple, like I saw this job, which was like, oh, you get to work on like OS software and it has like a security education. So I was like, oh, that's like exactly what I want to do. So yeah, so I thought it was like a non-answer, but I think it is something to think about, like whether or not you want to do something like security first or software first, or even something different, like
so yeah, I feel like security is like pretty broad. So like when someone says they want to do security, it can mean anything from like incident response or like detection or like research or like what Aaron's doing, like software engineering and security, or like rolling your own crypto. So it's like very broad. So I guess it depends on like what field of interest you want to be in. So like for me, so currently like my focus is essentially AI with security and privacy, somewhere around the middle. So like I interned last summer at Nero, which is essentially an autonomous vehicle startup. So when I was looking for that and I was at like where I'm currently going to be working, it was essentially where is security going to be a big deal? And what is the industry? So the industry is like, okay, there is going to be some sort of like AI ML like aspect. And then so obviously like security isn't going to be considered, so that's where I can come in and be useful. That's so it's like very field focused.
I think this is a tricky question to answer specifically. I think just my opinion of the UCLA curriculum sort of structures its ways such that people like graduates can be capable software engineers. I think it has a very, like leaning towards software development and that particular route. But like Sanjay mentioned, like security is very broad, like incident response, like malware analysis. There are certain skills that are involved in that are not necessarily on the beaten path that UCLA provides in terms of like CS classes. So like, for example, like reverse engineering, like you cover a little bit of it in CS 33, but that's not enough to be able to, go and, perform like malware analysis or, be a very top tier, like reverse engineer. Like you'd have to build those skills outside of just like classwork. Yeah, and so in that case, I think it's really, I guess I can probably only speak from my experience, but I honestly didn't think I was going to do what I do now for a job. Like, I basically discovered that I like to make games, like summer going into junior year, because I didn't get an internship. And so I just like, okay, I'll pick up Unity, try Game Jam, and found that I really liked it. And so, I already had, I guess, a previous interest in security, and it was just more so like blending those two interests and passions together, which I guess I was lucky enough to like find that there existed a job that sort of tailored to both those interests. So I think maybe like if there's a specific aspect of security that you're interested in, then I guess focusing on that, regardless if the curriculum at UCLA supports it, and just like really honing in on that, I think is probably the advice that I would give. But I know it varies from person to person.
Awesome. I'm gonna hit you guys with some fun questions. Oh, sorry, Luke. I will let you answer.
I guess this one is for Aaron in particular. How did you get into OS development? And is there anything you would recommend for those of us that are interested in that style?
Yes, it could be someone asked this. No. Just kidding. For OS development, I think I first got interested in it when I took 33. Like I knew I liked 33. And this is not saying you have to do any of this, or you like if this isn't you, then OS development's not for you. But I think that I like 33, and then I actually interned for 2 years at Green Hills. I think they were pretty good, right? Green Hill Software. So they make like, I think their tagline is like, "Oh, make unhackable software." Just comes with a lot of asterisks. Yeah, like yeah, just a very interesting company, I think, and getting to intern there really like cultivated my love for like doing operating systems. And I think that the advice I would give to someone that's interested is, well, take 33 and 111, and I think those are required though. I think a lot of it though was, to be honest, outside of class. Actually, when I was an undergrad, like I built my own x86 kernel, so I was able to like run it in a VM and stuff like that. So yeah, that was quite difficult, I think, but really like made me like it. And that's when I had a crisis of, do I like software development or do I like security? And I think that helped me. But I think for someone who's like on the fence, I would say that demonstrated interest goes a long way. Like, as in, if you can go to, actually, I don't know how to, but okay, so I'll just tell it anyway. So when I first went to my first Green Hills info session, I knew like I wanted to try to like get an internship, and I went up there and I handed the guy my resume, and he's like, "Hey, sorry, we don't take sophomores." And I was like, "Okay, well, can you just like keep my resume just in case?" And he's like, "Sure." And then I'll add it. And then I leave, but actually that same year, like a couple months later, like my OS professor, and I took it with Professor Ryer, like he recommended like me, or he like gave me a shout out, or whatever you call it. Like he plugged me to them, and then all of a sudden, like they had a spot or something like that. I was like, okay, but I think the point of me telling that is, I think even when I still had to interview and stuff, and I think that having something where it's like, hey, I felt like I was interested in this, so I did this thing, right? It could be something as simple as like, I did a CTF challenge, right? The specific CTF challenge, which was, I don't know, had to do with like the specific aspect of like dynamic linking or something like that really like scratched that itch for me. And this really liked it. I think that like goes a long way to not only to like cultivate your own interest, but to have that to just even like put on your resume or just talk about when you're like talking to someone who might be interested in like bringing on. Hopefully that's helpful.
Awesome. I'm gonna hit you guys with some fun questions now. So, what is your favorite TV show that you've watched recently?
I'm gonna shout out Andor. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and so I think that Andor does a lot in terms of like giving I don't want to say just like a gritty like portrayal of the Star Wars universe, but I think it kind of takes the best elements of Rogue One. Okay, I'm exposing some of the future. Like the best elements of Rogue One of an ensemble cast and just like really honing in on the characters, and it's about a guy who's sort of lost everything, and it's like him like finding his place in the galaxy, and there's also political intrigue, and there's like world building, and it's just like I don't know, it's perfect. And the score by I think Nicholas Britell, it's massive. So I recommend Andor. Even if you're not a Star Wars fan or just science fiction fan in general, I think it's probably like the best thing that Disney Plus has put out so far.
So currently my brother has got me hooked on Smallville because I only watch fantasy/mystery shows. But yeah, I'm like season 6, very deep in. I don't know how I feel about this.
Let's see. I don't watch too much TV, but recently I have this friend who wanted me to hang out with him, and we hung out, and we watched Drake and Josh. Yeah, so I mean, plot synopsis for that one. There's like Drake and there's Josh, and then we're in a cosplay. I forget what the name is, but yeah, just like I enjoy watching like shorter stuff like that. It feels like not as big a commitment, and it's nice because the episodes are like by themselves. I like Andor too, but I think that's going to be mine if you didn't take it. But yeah, so Drake and Josh.
Cool.
What's the top song on your Spotify playlist right now?
I'm gonna come back to me. Let me check.
Let me check.
So for me, I think one song I really like that I've been listening to recently is Lifetime by Justin Bieber. It's part of his Justice album. I know what you guys are thinking, but he's different. This is not like the My World 2.0 of Justin Bieber. Yeah, he's actually good now, so give him a listen.
I don't know what exactly is my most listened song, but I'm gonna shout out Periphery, their gent metal band. They released 2 singles, Zagreus and Wildfire. And I also listen to this other progressive metal band called Bolivia. So yeah, I actually have played. Also, I'll shout out a game soundtrack, Postionomics. I've never played the game before, but the soundtrack of the game is pretty good.
I can't find it. I'm presuming it's Escapism by Ray, and it's
Awesome. Not bad taste in music. Pretty good. So I'm gonna pass the mic to Laura, who's been dying to ask this question.
So I don't know if you guys play games. I figure that Peter does, but I want to know what your favorite games are.
Okay, that's a very tough question, but Journey has to be up there. Ori and the Blind Forest. I have some guilty pleasures. Like I like FIFA. I play FIFA a lot. Let's see. A game I've been recently been playing is Pentiment. It's like a murder mystery like game set in like Bavaria in the 16th century. It's by Obsidian. It's like a narrative-based game. Like I also like history, so that was a really cool game. Let's see, some shooters, Rainbow Six Siege. I used to be really into that game. Obviously a little bit of Overwatch. But yeah, there's like a Tony Hawk Pro Skater. That's a fun game. There's a lot of games. Oh, I heard Hogwarts Legacy just came out. I heard good things about that. I actually just like purchased it, and so I'm gonna play that. So, yeah.
This too. Board games. Sure. So currently I'm like playing Island of Cats, but it's
I haven't played too many games recently, but I tried to play my first game of League of Legends with my brother. Got absolutely destroyed. Not gonna play that again. I also played a game called Bread and Fred. It's like this indie platformer game, and you're two penguins. It's like a two-player game where you have to like work together. Yeah. It definitely stresses relationships. So if you want to test your relationship with someone else, or even like I was playing with my brother, and yeah, it's infuriating kind of. It's like you're basically two penguins and you're connected by a rope. So like when one penguin is like hanging and swinging like this. Yeah, it's like a teamwork game. Yeah.
Oh, question from Joshua.
Have you looked at our challenges yet?
I have not, but judging based on your guys' CTF time performances, I think that I wouldn't be able to solve that many of them. It's also been quite a few years.
All right, so this is going to be kind of a fun cyber related question. So from running workshops and from playing some CTFs, there's a lot of really cool pieces of software, written for cybersecurity and whatnot, but just some of them are really, really bad. So what piece of software or CTF tool or security tool you have used, you've just made for a workshop or something, you've just hated, it's the worst tool that you use?
Let's see. I don't think I have an answer for this exact question, but I'm gonna say a tool that I think I used, but I think it was a skill issue. It's always better when I did it the right way, it was really good, but the way I did it was really bad. So at the time, we were using Terraform. I don't know if you guys have used Terraform before, but it's basically like this thing that you can use to specify like all your infrastructure, and this is what we're trying to help on the CTF. And so you would specify your infrastructure like declaratively, kind of in this like object style, and you would give it to like the Terraform thing with your EC2 credentials, and it would make everything for you, set everything. And I thought it'd be really like, that's a good idea, right? Like, oh, you can just set things up and take them down whenever, just from this one file, just don't change the file. But there's just so many like corner cases that, yeah, it was really rough, I think, to use that. So I spent probably like 30 hours, like 1 week trying to get it to work, and it never worked. So if anyone knows how to use Terraform, I would love a tutorial. But yeah, I think for me, that was one, I could feel myself using it wrong, but I didn't know anyone who knew how to use it right. So yeah, I'm gonna say Terraform, even though I think it's actually widely used in the industry, which is why it made me feel good this. But
thank goodness we're not using Terraform for the CTF.
Challenges whenever it crashed.
Let's just say the Postgres database did not, you know how databases are supposed to be persistent. Well, it was not persistent. So.
I think the big thing I hate in this world more than anything else is CSS. Dislike CSS.
So true.
You stole, I was gonna say that. You know, that's why we use game. Anyways, I was gonna say Emacs. Uh, because I get judged for not being able to use Vim. Oh, like what do you use? Like, oh, Emacs. I'm like, oh, Emacs. Yeah, by all my coworkers. So it seems like they're at least where I work, there's a Vim bias.
The crowd rebels with the Vim Emacs war.
Vim's the best, hands down.
Moving on to, what is your favorite cybersecurity topic?
But you have software. My favorite cybersecurity software is Sherlock. I don't know how many people are familiar with Sherlock, but essentially it's an OSINT tool. And you can use it to stalk people. Not saying you should stalk people if you want.
OSINT joyers rise up.
Answering the sentence question.
Uh,
Alright, I'm gonna go security tool. I think I liked Binary Ninja when I used it, but I think just in general, like maybe at work, the tool I use that I think is heavily underrated is basically any Git GUI program. I use one called Gitfork, but when you have like a gazillion branches and like you need to do rebasing stuff, just being able to see it, I think makes so much difference. Yeah, sometimes I'm like screen sharing with my coworker and they're trying to like fix up a command or like rebase something and it's like so painful. And I'm like, yeah, just push it and let me do it on my side. So yeah, I would recommend that to any software. That's kind of how I think that.
IDA Pro. IDA Pro. Like that's something that getting familiar with really helpful. Sure, especially like also getting used to like debuggers too. So like x64 DBG, Win DBG. So I heard someone like my old firm actually called WinBag for like debugging and stuff like that. Yeah, I think debuggers are super helpful. Yeah. I just have been using IDA Pro.
I assume you have a legitimate license for IDA Pro too, right? Have to make sure.
oh, quick question.
Okay, so what is your favorite CTF challenge, if you remember?
I think the first time that I did, I forget. I think it was a challenge called Baby Rock, and this was when I was first getting into CTFs. But I think the first time I did like a rock chain. That really blew my mind, and just to understand how it worked. And I remember the rest of the day, I was just like, All right, I was just really exciting. I think doing it and getting a flag. So that's probably my favorite one. I feel like it's always nice to do something for the first time and have that.
Web, crypto, miscellaneous, RE in that order.
There's one challenge I remember one of our former officers like made. It was like a game, it was like a flash game. It was like you're shooting asteroids or whatever, and it was like really hard to beat. Or like the objective was to reach a certain like high score. Yeah, it was Joe's game, but I actually don't know the solution to that. What the proper one to beat. I thought that idea of like, oh yeah, making a game that you need to have, but wow, so topical. But it makes sense. And that was something that was really fascinating. household.
Like, oh, yeah, yeah. There was, I kind of remember solving it.
All right, the CTF blurry days. Going back to my question, favorite security topic?
That's a hard question. I'm gonna go with one that I think has been really interesting recently. So the team that I work on at Apple, the public facing thing that they do is they manage like this chip, this coprocessor on the iPhone called the Secure Enclave. You can like look it up, it's like public knowledge. And it basically manages like a bunch of secrets for you. If you want to do like manages like Face ID data, stuff like that. So I think I've been learning a lot about like hardware security and the things that they do that are even documented on Apple's website to like make hardware tamper resistant, even if an attacker has physical access, which I know is like a very difficult thing to do. So yeah, I think that's been really interesting and really fun to learn about, at least from like the software perspective.
Adversarial machine learning. I was gonna steal it. I'm sorry, I'm selling it, but it actually is like crazy how many like fields it becomes real.
Yeah.
Can be applied to games, to art, right? Just solving, bypassing like communication methods. Like, yeah, it's just universally applicable.
Thanks, Peter. I think I have a lot, so I don't know. Adversarial ML is definitely one of them because I feel like the field is also significantly more than just coming up with like random noisy like samples. And like not enough people are working in it. So I think there's like a lot of space to grow. Web security because it's like super easy. Well, that's a hot take, but it is. I think I'm also like getting into more hardware sec, but that's more like physical hardware sec. So like debugging ports or like UART ports. Also like communication security, like BLE or like BLE mesh is also super interesting. I think something that I'm getting into more, like especially like at Stanford, is cyber policy and like risk management. And I think that's like super cool. It's like how do you scale cybersecurity? And I think that's something that like most policymakers legit just don't know how to do because they just don't understand what the cloud is and how that works. So that's also pretty interesting.
All right, I'm gonna ask a bit of a loaded question right now. So CTFs, do you think that they are really educational and you're worth your time playing and learning stuff from? Question mark. Loaded question.
I think it depends on what your goal is, to be honest. Like to be very honest, because I think when solving like it's a different mindset to like solve a CTF problem versus like create a challenge, for example. Like, yeah, there is development sometimes in like scripting that's done to solve like certain CTF problems, but it's like almost like red team, blue team, right? Type of mentality. And so I'd say like yes, it is worth your time with the caveat of like which sort of side are you interested in like specializing. I mean, I think maybe people will have a different opinion on that, but I'm just kind of being different.
No, I agree. I think it honestly depends on what you want out of the CTF. Generally, I feel like for me at least, it was more of a this is fun and that's why I'm doing it. It was less of a I feel like you do learn things tangentially, like when you look up things. I just think that the real world, like solving security, like especially defensive security in the real world, doesn't really work like how it works in CTFs. Like you don't get hints, you don't get clues. It's like very much a black box environment. You don't get code all the time. Sometimes you do, in which case like your life is easier. I think CTFs are fun because you do learn like very obscure, like about like obscure issues or like obscure bugs. But I feel like the real world is very different. But that's just me.
For me, I think that CTFs are a great way to like learn. I ultimately, I think it just provides like a structured way for you to like learn new topics and feel rewarded when you do, which is always a good thing. I think just the one, I guess not negative, but caveat to that is that I feel like security engineering is definitely not like CTFs. Or CTFs isn't what you would normally expect to be doing all the time. Like Sanjana said, it's not a challenge that's been like crafted for you to solve really. A lot of times it's looking for an answer where there might not be one. So I think, but I feel like it's a good thing to get into it as long as you find it interesting, and it's definitely helpful to like learn things and yeah, as a resume builder, I guess, if you want to use it like that.
Question from Keith.
Oh, do you want me to, I can speak louder?
For the
Oh, okay. I guess like, I came in late, but Carrie filled me in what you guys do. Like, day to day, like, what does working in security mean for you guys? And I know it doesn't always mean like coding and like software development. Like, what do you guys do, like, during your 8 hours? Minute by minute, second by second.
So for me, it actually does mostly consist of software development. But I guess the security portion of that is that like when we're doing software development, we definitely have security in mind. Like there's been times when my coworkers are like, hey, we should do this, or like, this is a huge security hole that we'll have to patch later. Or for example, thinking about how to do certain things that require elevated privileges like testing, debugging, which in general require like, you to be able to supervise another process. That in general is like, I guess, not secure for the other process. So things like that, thinking about how to make those policies work as a whole and like an operating system. So yeah, there's thought that goes into that. And we also have like security teams that will come in and like audit the code that we're writing as well. So they have a kind of different philosophy, and it's a lot more rigorous than what we do. But for us, it's mostly just like developing with security in mind. And
What does that mean? Like, what do you mean by like developing?
so I think that for my job at least, like I'm not an architect, at least right now. So like there's a security design, like for Mac OS, for example, like there is a security policy and people come up with like different security policies all the time. System integrity protection is one that happened in like the last few years. And so like there's security by design from that standpoint. And then for me as like a coder day to day, if I'm using a language like C, it'll be like basically auditing my own code. And I'm expected to like be able to recognize like common vulnerabilities, that kind of stuff, like in other people's code as well. So I think just coding on a security focused product is a little more security involved than just like coding other things. So that's the extent for me. So it's not too much, but there is something there. And I think people are expected, at least on my team, to have a security background, be able to identify like certain issues.
Yeah, so for my job, it's software development with security in mind. So what does that mean? Okay. So like we have performance constraints. When our anti-cheat should have minimal impact on the game's performance. So we have like a frame budget for certain like checks or just things that we're doing to like verify the integrity of the game. There are also concerns of like doing things in sort of a stealthy way. So if we're gonna like call like, Windows API, or like maybe we should, query something, get something that's closer to kernel land, or maybe even, just use direct sys calls, like just like certain methods, I'll just produce less noise for a reverse engineer to sort of like pick up on and figure out how our code works. So there's definitely like tricks that we have to try to keep in mind and try to adhere to, but very much so it's a cat and mouse game. Like we're always going to be kind of one step behind because the hackers only need to find one vulnerability, and they have control over the box, right? Over the machine, over the executable that we're shipping to them. So There's only so much that we can do, but it's fun nevertheless trying to figure out where we can, we can obfuscate, obscure and try to make things different.
So currently for me at least, I'm just drowning in homework 24/7. It's my life right now. But while I was working, so I'm not really a software engineer. I'm like more security. And it's interesting. So like you would think that it would be like 100% like just hacking. For the most part it is. Like my role is essentially break as much as I can. But I feel like a good chunk is like threat modeling. Like just figuring out what potential attacks could look like because you only have so many resources and so much time available to break something. And then there's like the actual breaking of things. And then after that, there's the documentation, and that's the absolute worst. Because like the more things you find, the more things you have to write up. And that can take, say if you're like working, like if you're doing like an assessment for maybe like say a month, you may be working on your report for a solid 2 weeks, which is painful. But I feel like, and I think another aspect is also like talking to people. So like you have to have like a lot of communication with like the teams you're working with. Because if you're assessing their product, you want to be on good terms with them because otherwise they're unlikely to fix it. Because in general, I feel like there's like some level of animosity between like software and hardware teams with security because anytime a bug report comes or like a vulnerability comes up, that means there's like, or like a ticket, it's like one more thing that they have to fix. So generally if you're like on a good like basis with them, people are more willing to fix things. So it's also like a people problem.
That's actually a really good point because at least like in the context of games, security is technically optional. Like security is like it's like saves money, right? Like from a business perspective, it's like you're preventing cheaters from being part of your game, which will ruin player experience, which would cause more people to quit the game. They quit the game, that's less money coming in, right? So it's always like a preventive measure, right? Versus like the game team where they're making the product, so their bottom line, like there's that's where the profit and revenue is made, right? So in that sense, it is a lot of like buy-in and like selling your problem, saying like this is why you should fix it. And so developing those soft skills and being able to sort of like explain why you should care is actually surprisingly important. This is the job over.
Yeah, just to add on to that too, if you're like applying for a security role, my advice is like ask how much the company cares about security, and you'll get varied responses, and that's like it's pretty interesting because like some people will say they care about security and if you can because everything's public, you can look this up. You'll get a feel of how much they actually care. Like you can go on LinkedIn and see how many security engineers they're either hiring or they already have. And it's just a good way to see how much of like whatever you're working on will actually have an impact on the company you're at, because they might just hire you for the sake of hiring a security engineer and then you're just a sitting duck in the background, which is unideal.
Question for
This is kind of like not really security related and also kind of like targeted questions for each of you. So I guess I'll start with like Sanjana. So like what made you choose, like I know after undergrad people are kind of like they go two ways. It's either grad school or industry. And what made you choose grad school? And sorry.
Okay, so to be quite honest, it was like a compromise like between me and my parents. They weren't like super keen about me doing cybersecurity, and my dad really wanted me to do machine learning. It just kind of worked out. Or like my dad wanted me to go to grad school. And it worked out that I really like machine learning, and it's in general, I feel like undergrad isn't necessarily enough to get like a really strong like basis and like AI or like there's like a lot of classes that you really just don't have the time to take. So it kind of worked out. Like it was a sort of compromise, and I wasn't really sure if I would like grad school. But I think it's interesting because I feel like I'm actually like learning about things that I care about versus circuits, which I really didn't care about. So like right now it's just 24/7. I'm just doing things that I enjoy, which is super.
So, I guess for like Peter and Aaron, I more wanted to ask about like industry, like for Peter specifically, like what is it like working in the game industry?
What is it like? To be honest, it's a lot of fun. For me. I have a lot of fun in my job because I really like games and contributing to that process. And I think the job, on top of the job itself, it's really cool to be able to talk with like creatives at lunch or just like people who like made the things you kind of grew up with, at least playing some of the games. And just like being able to talk about that, and so there's that communal aspect of like we all like video games, we all care about the product because it's like at the end of the day, it's a job, but we're also very passionate about what the experience we're trying to provide to like players and whatnot. And so playing a particular role in that and seeing like impacts on players is something I find very like rewarding.
And yeah, as for Aaron, like I know like I think Apple kind of has a lot of like non-disclosure type things, so I know you can't really talk a lot about the specifics, but like how do you feel like working in like I know Apple's kind of like a big corporation. How do you feel that environment is?
Yeah, so I think there are good things and bad things. I think the good things, at least for my position, is that like I'm doing like OS work and there just aren't a lot of companies that do that work. And also in order to do it, I think you need to be and do it well, you need to be a certain size. A size where you're big enough to make investments over a long term because especially when your OS is being used a lot, like it's very difficult to change things. People joke like, oh, if I break my API, like it breaks like 5 users. But if you break an API, it probably breaks like millions of people. So yeah, like all of a sudden, even doing a simple task, like changing something simple about the OS becomes very difficult. It requires a lot of resources. So I think that's a good and the part that I enjoy. I'm working at a place like that. And I think I would say the negatives or what can bother people about it is, yeah, there is the secrecy part. Apple in general is pretty secretive. Like they like to keep their product launches like very secret until the day that's released. And so that can sometimes be difficult because just from a productivity standpoint, like a lot of work is duplicated sometimes, right? Like when you're siloed off from another team because they're too secret for you or you're too secret for them, like sometimes you solve the same things and then you're like, oh, if only it was a little more open, maybe that could have been avoided. So I think that can be frustrating sometimes. And then also just like any big company, it can sometimes feel like with some people, some people describe it as being a cog in this machine. I think it can be like that sometimes. And I definitely know people who wouldn't like that, just from a personality standpoint, like they want to be able to directly see their impact on the company, which at a large company like Apple, it's just like not that realistic unless you're like a VP, yeah, something like that. Like I can't even imagine how high you have to go to be able to see like your direct culture or something. So yeah.
Cool. Sorry, I have like so many questions. I feel like I'm hogging it. I actually have more questions for Sanjana. I know you like mentioned to me about how you do research, and you also mentioned that you are going to work at a startup. And I guess I kind of want like it's 2 separate questions.
Sure.
Maybe like you can choose which question you want to answer more, or you want to answer both of them, because I know I'm asking you a lot. But like I guess maybe like I want to hear more about like first like what you do for your research. And also the second one, like you said you interned at a startup, and I don't know, I guess like seeing as you're choosing to work at another startup, like how do you think that environment like might compare to like maybe grad school or like maybe to like a corporation?
It's hard to compare like a startup to I can compare like undergrad to grad school. So grad school I feel like is more chill. Like there's just more freedom for what you do. At least for me. And there's like you can pick your classes, you have more like flexibility. There's not like a set course. Like Stanford's EE program, it's like very free for all. Like you can take whatever you want. So the majority of my courses are actually in computer science and aeroastro. not, I think I'm taking like maybe, I've taken 2 EE, like actual EE classes. So it's very free form. Also, I think like all the classes are more like project focused and like research project focused. So, and they don't really care if you fail. It just like promotes like research, like you just try things, experiment. So startups, like Erin mentioned, you have, so I've entered at 2 startups before, and you can like visibly see the impact you have. And it's just like easier to get more done. Like I feel like you're not really like a small like cog in the wheel sort of thing where you're just like there like one of like million or like yeah, thousands. I think there's like more, you have like more responsibility, which is like if you want to like grow your career super fast is like super helpful because you just get more responsibilities. So like at Neuro, I was responsible for like I was responsible for securing their entire autonomy pipeline. And as an intern, which is not like something that would be possible at like a large company. So that's like, I think definitely, like there's pros and cons for like working at a corporation versus a startup. I just feel like for me, it like makes more sense. I just like doing important things. Research. So I have like side research projects, like the dating app face verification project was more of a side research project that came out of a class. But my actual research is focused on essentially it's like algorithmic fairness. So it's basically analyzing given some neural network, how much yes, noise can it withstand until it becomes like unfair, except more in a security perspective. So like for example, say you have like some sort of classification, and the goal of like an adversary is to essentially change what that classifier is predicting. So we're trying to see like to formally like, so one question is, okay, like does the classifier's output change, which is easy to see. But then the question is, how can you formally verify that this output will always change if you do some sort of X, Y, and Z? I mean, that's like what my actual research has been focused on, but so late to wrap this.
Cool, thank you for humoring me. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, so the main question I had was, I guess like what made you like finally decide to all go to like this like sort of like cybersecurity field? And as well as like what other like options within like say like computer science or like other majors were you also considering?
Well, I definitely knew I didn't want to do web development after a hackathon. So I'll avoid that. So maybe, backend development or engineering or whatnot. So that was an option, but I'd say finding games kind of changed everything, at least like finding that like game development. And then the previous, I guess, internship experience and just like my involvement with cyber, I already had a cybersecurity leaning. So it was more so leveraging that skill set to where I could find like some sort of like mix with games. And so it was pretty obvious. Like once I found that thing, it was just like, yeah, there's no really any other option, I think.
So I got started with cybersecurity in like high school, so it's something that I've always wanted to do. Initially, I think I wanted to do like specifically IoT security. That was like something I was pretty like fascinated by. I guess if I wasn't an electrical engineering major, I would do applied math. Potentially. I don't know.
I think for me, yeah, like I said, cybersecurity was always, I think, second to me knowing that I wanted to do some type of like low-level software development. So when I was at Green Hills, for example, like I wasn't necessarily working on security stuff. Like I had to have a certain amount of knowledge, but I was like working network code, which was still really fun. But when I got that opportunity to work in security again, I decided to. Yeah, so I guess it was by accident, or not by accident, but I think for me, it was always negotiable, as in I wasn't gonna not take a job because, like, oh, that's not security enough, I think. At least that was my decision-making process.
All right. Oh. keep them-
Oh, wait.
Yeah, no.
Um. Sandra, I know you're in grad school right now, and I presume that means that, no, it's for everyone. You can, like, what are your guys' opinion on, like, right after you graduate, going into industry versus graduate school? Do you think that cybersecurity within industry requires more training, more school that you would need grad school? Or do you think that you can kind of self-study or learn on the applied industry? Like, what are the industry standards? What are your guys' opinions? So kind of twofold question.
I think well, my opinion is that that you don't need grad school. You definitely don't need grad school. For me, the only reason I would personally go to grad school is if I knew there was a topic that I didn't get to explore enough in undergrad that I wanted to explore more. I guess like going into grad school with like a direction, like, hey, I want to like go to grad school for this, like that seems reasonable to me. And I guess as an anecdote, like pretty much everyone on my team either has a PhD or nothing, as in, or not nothing, but a bachelor's degree. Slip up there, but yeah, either a PhD or a bachelor's degree. And so I think that there isn't really that much justification in my opinion for going in between that, unless there is like that thing that you just want to explore more, like you want to have more time. That's my take. It's not a risk.
One of my teammates dropped out of UCSD in his undergrad, made cheats for 7 years, and now decided to chill over at Blizzard. Yeah, you don't, and other, I mean, yeah, at least with game hacking, like Blizzard hires hackers, former hackers, and so the education, like sometimes it's just a bachelor's degree or not even that yet. They just develop a skill set because they self-study and they're out in the wild trying to make a living off selling cheats and developing them. And yeah, so, but I'm not sure, that probably doesn't apply to like security, that's probably an outlier, but like Aaron mentioned, if I had to, I guess, go back where it was just like last year and make a decision between like grad school or taking a job in the industry, it's only if the grad school offering was very specific, tailored to my interests, and because it's quite an investment, I feel like, just financially, as well as like more time spent in school doing more homework, because some jobs, I guess the work you do on the day-to-day isn't really like schoolwork, even though schoolwork can be helpful in developing certain concepts for you to apply in your day-to-day job. So it just sort of depends on what field you're in, what you're specifically doing.
So like two of the smartest security engineers or like researchers that I've met barely finished high school, just for perspective. So I feel like it really depends on what you're doing. For me personally, I think machine learning and artificial intelligence is like a field where you can barely get a job without a PhD right now. And just like for the work that I want to do, I think like grad school is super important. And like I had a lot of fights, like I mentioned, I had a lot of fights with my parents because like I didn't really see the need to go to grad school, but like once I went, I was like, okay, this is like actually helping me out. And it's like relevant because this is like what I'm doing at work. But it's definitely like there's a lot of time lost. Like you feel like, okay, you could be working. It's like I'm stuck at school. Everyone my age is like actually being an adult, which is definitely a thing. But at least for me, I think it's been super helpful. Also, I feel like it depends on what you want to do. Like if you want to do engineering work all your life, I feel like it's also easier to, like, especially in cybersec, it's easier to get away with just a bachelor's. If you're trying to move up, generally most companies will want some sort of master's, either in like an MS or an MBA. It's generally how it works. Also, I think at least at Stanford, like grad school has been super close. I've met a lot of people that I would not have met otherwise. and people like who are doing very different things.
Let's build a life. I think it all.
Asking a question from the Discord, have any of the speakers submitted memes? It should be a requirement to speak, no?
Really old memes from like when there was a cyber alumni account or no? We're gonna have to submit it for LACTF.
I mean, if it's spicy, we'll like it.
I was afraid because it would show how old I am. I was thinking a meme from like 3 years ago, and like, what's this?
Wait, do you guys still have the business as usual? Shit. Yeah, you know, I mean, you could do some digging there and see what you can find, right? I don't know.
I have like, I think this is on one of the public channels. I have like a comment where it says Lisp started my bracket fetish, but I don't think that's really.
Comma. Now I'll wrap it up with one final question. What is one thing you miss most about UCLA?
The food.
Yes.
Being favorite dining hall? I think I'm gonna have to say best, as in for me, most nostalgic, it's gotta be Rondé. Because, yeah, every week, Thursday, California burrito. I don't think that life gets better than that, I think. But in terms of food quality, yeah, probably B plate. I also like Cobell when they had their like build your own pasta bowl. That was pretty cool. Do they?
I think I miss ice blocking a lot. Can't do that at Sanford. There are no hills. It's terrible. I don't miss the stairs at all. Favorite. Dude, I miss Cafe 1919, but apparently that no longer exists. You guys, it doesn't really matter, I guess.
B plate is the best dining hall. UCLA. Wanna make that clear. I miss ACM, to be honest. Or just like not necessarily miss because life moves on, but more so just like, yeah, the memories at ACM were very, very formative, very fun. Still talk to people. Here. Shout out to also GME, music ensemble. You know, that's cool, right? Music cool. So yeah, it's that too.
All right. With that, I think we'll wrap it up. Let's give it a big round of applause. So much, guys, for coming all the way out to LA for this event. I think we'll wrap up our panel for the people online, but for the people around, if you want to stay around and chat with them, let them chat. But thank you guys so much for coming, and we have one more event tonight. We'll see you later at that.